Becky Lamb's heartbreaking confession has rocked the Daystar network to its foundation as she reveals the truth about the constant tension behind closed doors. Many believe that the band's inner circle is now feuding and betrayed, which has shocked the fans even more. The inside story has finally come to light, so brace yourself. You will be astounded by Rebecca's words. Silence is the story of Becky Lamb and her husband, J.W. Rebecca Lamb's mother and the Daystar television network allegedly entered into a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, which the couple was obligated to comply with for a considerable amount of time. In addition to being a legally binding agreement, this non-disclosure agreement served as a barrier between Rebecca and J.W., preventing them from discussing a traumatic event in their lives. The NDA reportedly covered more than just typical business issues due to its breadth. Included were delicate issues pertaining to the company network, as well as personal family matters. The NDA addressed allegations that a relative named Pete had sexually abused Baby Lamb, one of their sisters. Rebecca and J.W. felt trapped because of this. They witnessed Pete engaging in disturbing behavior, such as inappropriately touching Baby Lamb, but they were unable to discuss it due to an upcoming important court document. Because of this non-disclosure agreement, the couple's professional and personal lives were greatly negatively affected. Their loved ones suffered, and they had to stand by while Jonathan and Susie Lamb battled the emotional and mental challenges of trying to, despite knowing what was happening behind the scenes, Rebecca and J.W. were unable to speak out due to the conflicting loyalties they felt towards their families and the harsh reality that they were legally prohibited from doing so. According to the reports, Rebecca was warned by her sister Rachel Lamb that they risked losing their house if she spoke out. Rebecca and J.W. were already anxious and stressed out, and this threat just made things worse. In addition to standing up for what was right, they were battling to protect the honor and wealth of their families. Doing what was right was secondary to ensuring the continued success of the family business. Even though they were aware of the truth, Becky and J.W. were unable to speak it. It broke their hearts to know that in order to keep the Lamb families and Daystar's reputations intact, they had to conceal the truth about what happened to Baby Lamb. They were in a horrible predicament that jeopardized their health, integrity, and religion. The passage of Trey's Law ensured the safety of Rebecca and J.W. In situations involving suspected child abuse, non-disclosure agreements are not enforceable according to this law. Quiet will be restored. No longer could abuse victims be coerced into silence by using non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, as the new rule made it crystal clear. After years of silence, Rebecca and J.W. were finally able to begin exposing the long-suppressed truths because they were legally allowed to do so, particularly in situations involving non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. The law significantly alters the handling of child abuse cases. No longer can victims of abuse be silenced by using non-disclosure agreements. Texas recently passed this law. For a long time, NDAs were a powerful tool for families, groups, and even companies to prevent damaging information from spreading. To maintain harmony or a positive reputation, people frequently struck these deals. The truth about child abuse was frequently concealed, and those responsible for terrible acts were protected by their use. The main reason for making the law was the case of Trey, a young boy, and the law was named after him. The abuse of non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, to cover up sexual abuse and evade legal action was highlighted in Trey's case. One reason why Trey's rule is significant is that this rule's consequences extend well beyond Trey's case. This has far-reaching consequences for those who have been hesitant to report abuse, particularly in situations involving minors, due to non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. It's a major shift in society's approach to victim silence as well, as families and organizations can't use contracts to prevent victims from speaking out about the trauma they've endured. For the sake of transparency and equity, people can speak out once more and receive the assistance they require. Under Trey's leadership, Rebecca Lamb and JW were rescued. For a long time, they were unable to discuss their family matters publicly due to the non-disclosure agreement legally bound them. Because of this, they were unable to discuss the distressing events surrounding the abuse of baby Lamb. Both the assailant and the victims remained silent thanks to the NDA. As a result, victims were hesitant to speak out and their families faced obstacles in seeking justice. However, this opens the door for these individuals to have a day in court and establishes a precedent for future cases of this kind. After Trey's law was passed, it seemed like Rebecca and JW didn't have anything to worry about. The use of non-disclosure agreements to conceal information regarding child abuse was explicitly prohibited. Victims could come forward without worrying about retaliation or legal issues. At last, they could speak up and tell their story, which allowed the truth to emerge. An already terrible situation was further exacerbated by the continual reminders of how powerless they felt. Witnessing their loved ones suffer abuse while they were unable to speak out for fear of reprisal was emotionally taxing. In addition to helping Rebecca and JW, Trey's law removed legal barriers so that other victims of abuse could come forward without fear of retaliation. As a result, many individuals who have been quiet for an extended period of time now feel empowered to speak their minds. Also, it was a clear message to families and groups who have been protecting themselves with non-disclosure agreements rather than the people they have victimized. Attempts to conceal abuse or prevent the truth from being revealed are no longer acceptable. The safety and well-being of children must always take precedence. The subject of child sexual abuse was kept secret by means of non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. Because it takes a direct aim at non-disclosure agreements, Trey's law changes everything. It states that legal contracts should not impede or delay the administration of justice, and that children's voices should not be silenced or their narratives kept hidden in the sake of protecting one's reputation or character. Additionally, under Trey's rule, the most vulnerable members of society are able to speak out, and those who harm others are held accountable. Politicians are also emphasized as being of paramount importance. When applied to the most vulnerable members of society, the law has the potential to be an effective tool for social transformation and justice. Rebecca and JW were granted a glimmer of hope and an opportunity to regain control of their story with the passing of Trey's law. The outcome was the product of tireless advocacy, years of dedicated work, and a firm resolve to safeguard children from the long-suffering abuse and exploitation that they endured at the hands of powerful individuals. A growing number of victims are speaking out and sharing their experiences. For those who have been in the dark for far too long, Trey's rule is starting to shine a light of hope. There has been an effort to shift the narrative around child abuse cases away from shame and silence. Their courage to speak out was driven by a desire to empower others who, like them, have been silenced by non-disclosure agreements as a result of abuse. The intention was to shed light on a system that has disappointed many and to prevent a recurrence of the same errors. Law is a powerful statement about the power of unity in standing up for justice. At long last, the just punishments for wrongdoing can be meted out. Everyone else saw Rebecca Lamb's life as ideal. Daystar television network was founded by her parents, Marcus and Joni Lamb, so she grew up in the limelight. Growing up in a devout household under the watchful eye of a media conglomerate made it appear as though her every endeavor would be met with miraculous success. Rebecca was hiding a heavy burden from everyone except her closest friends and family, hidden beneath all the cheerful lights and smiles. The rumors started circulating that a family member who was close to Daystar and trusted by the Lamb family had sexually abused baby Lamb, who was Daystar's niece. Eventually, Rebecca realized something was seriously wrong. Things became murky after that, but she felt an innate sense that the family should take action. Rebecca was aware that it would be difficult to disclose her observations to anyone due to the respectable reputation her family maintained. The issue escalated from its humble beginnings as a family matter to one that threatened Daystar's future as well as Rebecca's. Things became even more murky because the accused abuser, Pete, was friends with the Lamb family. An enormous amount of pressure to remain silent was present, and the outside world had no idea what was happening behind closed doors. Both Rebecca and her husband JW were burdened by this responsibility. Despite her responsibility to her family, Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had transpired, especially as more details emerged. At the time, her mental health issues were exacerbated by the stress of having to remain silent. Reportedly, Marcus and Joni coerced Rebecca and JW into signing a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, that forbade them from publicly discussing the allegations of abuse. Someone in their own family, whom they had laboriously worked to establish, committed more wrongdoing in this NDA than simply violating her rights. Although it had legal force, the non-disclosure agreement was more than that. Regardless of how difficult it was for Rebecca, she was warned to remain silent. She had conflicting morals, family, and religious beliefs. Family was always emphasized to her. They were unable to discuss the distressing events occurring within their own family due to the customary secrecy agreement. Because it seemed like the people they had trusted had betrayed them, Rebecca felt trapped. For the Lambs, it was business as usual. But as the truth ate away at Rebecca, she started to wonder if it had been wise to remain silent all along. In the end, the truth about what had transpired with baby Lamb was so incredibly painful, Rebecca persisted in praying for baby Lamb and for justice despite how difficult it was for her. Standing up for what was right was something she occasionally felt compelled to do, but she was terrified of the consequences for herself and her family if she came out. Along the way, Rebecca's brother Jonathan received a letter from Rebecca's husband JW, who expressed his concern after witnessing Pete's inappropriate behavior. The disturbing things that journalist JW had witnessed, such as Pete's abusive behavior towards baby Lamb, were discussed. His message was an effort to garner attention to the situation, as he was unable to disregard what he observed. The Lamb family continued to show no concern for the growing body of evidence pointing to abuse. No matter what happened, Rebecca was the one who maintained harmony in the family, believed that everyone had the capacity to grow and forgive, and kept the peace. Rebecca started to question her entire worldview as the accusations against Pete mounted, betrayed her faith and the trust she had placed in her family, and now she felt compelled to listen to their cries for help. Rebecca was already going through a lot emotionally, so things were getting worse. Was interfering with Rebecca's ability to form meaningful relationships with those closest to her. Rebecca became increasingly aware of the family's peculiar behavior as the events unfolded. Reportedly, Rachel, Rebecca's sister and an alleged accomplice, warned her that if she spoke out, her family might lose their home. Rebecca and JW felt an even stronger need to remain silent in the face of this threat. It appeared that being honest would lead to disastrous consequences, and there was a great deal at risk. How would Daystar fare in this scenario? In such a scenario, how would their family's business fare? The public may have viewed Rebecca and her family in a pious light, but Rebecca was well aware that the reality was far darker. Due to the NDA and the complete silence, Rebecca felt immense pressure. Despite knowing that speaking out would change everything, she struggled to make the decision to do so. Even Daystar's own future would be impacted by what had been kept hidden for such a long time. Even if she did nothing, she would be unable to live with herself. Rebecca had to make a difficult choice between her moral obligation to speak out and her duty to her family as the silence persisted, exacerbating her inner turmoil. Should she reveal the truth to her family and risk betraying them, or should she remain silent and face the repercussions? Fearing she would disappoint her family or ruin all they had worked for, Rebecca was hesitant to take action, despite her faith telling her to defend the innocent and fight for justice. Rebecca Lamb is the daughter of Marcus and Joni Lamb, who own Daystar television network. Rebecca Lamb's steadfast devotion to God and her family have always been her defining characteristics. Despite Rebecca's widespread fame, no one understood her plight except her immediate circle of loved ones. For years, she had been kept in the dark about a painful secret involving her niece's newborn lamb. A troubling chain reaction started when Rebecca spilt the beans, and no one could have predicted it. Pete, a Daystar employee and close friend of the Lambs, began acting strangely. As Rebecca continued to encounter more and more unsettling sights, her anxieties intensified. When it came to baby Lamb in particular, Pete should never have broken the rules. Pete had always been trusted by the family. Because Rebecca had been brought up to be a peacemaker and protector of her family, she was at a loss as to what to do when the situation became unbearable. The couple's already difficult situation allegedly became much worse when Marcus and Joni coerced them into signing a non-disclosure agreement, NDA. According to people familiar with the matter, the NDA went above and beyond what was initially anticipated. Her husband, JW, understood her pain after she explained it to him. They were both aware of how dire the situation was, but they were also cognizant of the fact that bringing attention to it could have disastrous consequences. Keeping Daystar's good name was very important to the family, particularly to Marcus and Joni. Rebecca was aware that being honest would damage the reputation they had worked so hard to establish. Rebecca and JW didn't discuss the abuse of baby Lamb or the events leading up to it because they had agreed to keep things secret. In addition to shielding the family's reputation and financial interests, the non-disclosure agreement prevented the public from learning the truth. Rebecca felt trapped because she had always prioritized honesty and fairness. For some reason, Rebecca kept having this sinking feeling that she was betraying baby Lamb and herself. There was an eerie stillness. Her mother, Joni, and the rest of her family were very insistent that she remain silent. Rebecca had always admired Joni for being a powerful and driven woman. As a result of being bound by a legal agreement that appeared to safeguard the wrong individuals, Rebecca now felt conflicted about being able to observe her cousin's silent suffering. The fact that she was powerless to stop the concealment of the truth made her anxious all the time. Anxiety was building up inside Rebecca as she battled with her religious beliefs and the traditional expectations placed on her by her family. At first, Rebecca trusted God's plan and believed that everything would be okay. But when things deteriorated further, she started to doubt her entire worldview. She was afraid something bad would happen if she told anyone what was happening, but for some reason she felt guilty about keeping quiet. After Trey's law was passed in Texas, Rebecca mustered up the courage to speak out. Instances of sexual abuse of children were significantly affected by this law. A particularly severe violation of the rule was the passage of Trey's law was a watershed moment. It was like a beacon of hope for Rebecca and JW, illuminating a situation that had appeared hopeless for an extended period. For the first time in a long time, they felt safe enough to express their true feelings. The statute finally provided an avenue for them to disclose their knowledge regarding baby Lamb's fate without fear of legal repercussions if non-disclosure agreements were abused. He was prepared to take Lamb beyond the fence. There was no way out for Rebecca. She knew coming out would be bad for her loved ones, Daystar's charity, and their entire mission. If Rebecca kept quiet about what had happened to baby Lamb, she would never be able to forgive herself. She was finally prepared to let go of the burdens she had carried for so long. It was a difficult and heartbreaking decision for Rebecca to come clean about baby Lamb's abuse. Since Rebecca had endured so much suffering in silence, she reasoned that if she spoke out, the truth would emerge and baby Lamb would receive justice. She knew it would affect everyone around her, but she knew it had to be done. Spending an excessive amount of hours